Imagine you're a French sailor in the 1340s. You're crossing the English Channel, heading for port. Fog rolls in, the kind of thick fog that swallows sound and distance. And then, you see it. 3 warships, painted black, sails dyed the color of dried blood, cutting through the mist like they were born from it. A woman steps to the railing of the lead ship. She's holding an executioner's axe. Her name is Jeanne de Clisson, and if you're on a French ship, that name is the last thing you'll ever hear. For 13 years, she hunted the French coast without mercy. When she captured nobles, she beheaded them herself, with that same axe. She always left one sailor alive. Just one. To carry the message back to the king. This is her story. Jeanne de Belleville was born around 1300 in Poitou, western France. Her father died when she was 4. She inherited vast estates, lands, castles, the island fortress of Eu. By the time she was 30, she was one of the wealthiest women in Brittany. She married 3 times. Her third husband was Olivier de Clisson, a powerful Breton lord, a knight of high standing, and a commander in the War of the Breton Succession. That war was messy. It was France versus England, but fought on Breton soil. 2 families claimed the Duchy of Brittany, Charles de Blois, backed by the French king, and John de Montfort, backed by England. Olivier fought for the French side. He was loyal. They had 5 children together. Olivier was a decorated commander. Jeanne ran the estates. They had power, land, and the respect of their peers. It didn't last. In January 1343, a truce was signed between England and France, the Truce of Malestroit. Under its terms, a tournament was called. The King of France, Philip VI, personally invited Olivier and 15 other Breton lords to attend. Safe conduct was guaranteed. Olivier arrived in Paris. He entered the tournament grounds, and they arrested him. No trial in front of his peers, no public evidence, just a quiet, pre-arranged snatch. What did they have on him? Secret correspondence with Edward III of England? That was the charge. Olivier had been captured by the English months earlier and ransomed. The ransom was surprisingly low. That was enough. Charles de Blois, the French-backed duke, decided Olivier had sold out. He confessed, under torture. On August 2, 1343, Olivier IV de Clisson was beheaded at Les Halles, the central market of Paris. His body was dragged to the gibbet of Montfaucon and hanged in chains, a punishment meant for common criminals, not knights. His head was sent to Nantes, where it was displayed on a lance over the Sauvetou gate. Even the chroniclers of the time, Froissart among them, condemned it. The evidence had never been shown. The execution was a message, and Jeanne received it. Jeanne took her 2 young sons, Olivier, age 7, and Guillaume, age 5, from their castle in Clisson to Nantes. She brought them to the Sauvetou gate. She showed them their father's head. There's no record of what she said to them that day, but there's a record of what she did next. She sold everything, her lands, her castles, her jewelry. Her marriage was her identity, and the king had ripped it away, so she burned that identity to the ground and built something else. She raised 400 men, loyal soldiers from the de Clisson lands, men who had served her husband. She converted 3 merchant ships into warships, cogs, the flat-bottomed cargo vessels of the era, broad and sturdy. And then she painted them black. She dyed their sails red, blood red. The flagship she named My Revenge. The Black Fleet was born. She took her boys, one of whom would one day become the most powerful man in France, and sailed out to hunt. Her first target was Toufou Castle. Jeanne and her men attacked at night. They slaughtered the entire garrison. Except one. She left him alive, to tell the king. Then she hit Château Thibault, a garrison town southeast of Nantes, one her husband used to command. Same result. From there, she moved to open water. The Bay of Biscay, the English Channel. She knew them all. Her family had owned the island of Eu for generations. She'd grown up in these waters. The strategy was simple. Commerce raiding. Hit the merchant ships, not the warships. Destroy the supply lines. Let the panic do the work. When she captured French nobles, legend says she beheaded them herself, on the deck of her ship, with an axe. And every time she spared one sailor. One man to sail home and tell the story. Word spread. The French called her La Tigresse, the Tigress. English chroniclers called her the Lioness of Brittany. and wherever a red sail appeared on the horizon, the channel went silent. But here's the part that separates Jeanne from most pirates. She wasn't just a renegade, she had powerful friends. In 1343, while the French were confiscating her lands, King Edward III of England, the enemy of her enemy, granted her an income from English-controlled territory in Brittany. English court records confirm this. In 1346, during Edward III's Crécy campaign, the famous invasion of northern France, Jeanne's ships were used to supply the English army. She wasn't raiding randomly. She was operating as an English naval asset. The Treaty of Calais in 1347, a formal truce between England and France, named Jeanne as an English ally. Not a pirate, a military commander. And then, she remarried. Sir Walter Bentley, an English knight, Edward III's military deputy in Brittany. A decorated commander who would go on to win the Battle of Moran in 1352, securing English control over much of Brittany. Together, they controlled a network of castles and lands across the Breton coast. She was not alone. She was not a rogue. She was a noblewoman who had lost everything, allied with the most powerful king in Europe, and built a new life from the wreckage of the old one. But the enemy was relentless. The French Navy cornered her fleet. In one engagement, the exact date lost to history, they destroyed her ships. Jeanne drifted at sea for 5 days, clinging to wreckage. Her son Guillaume, only 7 years old, died of exposure in those waters. The 1868 poem tells this part of the story in dramatic detail. What we know for certain: her son Guillaume died young, but she survived, and she continued, for years after. Smaller operations, but she never stopped. She and Walter Bentley were granted the barony of La Roche-Mouzon in 1357 as compensation for lands they'd lost. The war was winding down. The plague had devastated Europe. People were exhausted. In December 1359, Jeanne de Clisson died at the castle of Hennebon in Brittany. Her husband Walter died the same month in the same castle. They were buried together. That could have been the end of her story, but it wasn't. Remember the boy she took to see his father's head on a pike? Olivier de Clisson. He grew up to become one of the most powerful men in France. He was appointed Constable of France, the supreme commander of the French army, under King Charles VI. He led the French to victory against the English. He was called the Butcher of Auray. The executed man's son became the king's right hand. Jeanne de Belleville died in 1359, but her son carried her legacy into the highest halls of power in the kingdom that had murdered his father. That's not a pirate story. That's a dynasty. Okay, here's the part. Most videos don't tell you. A lot of what you just heard is backed by 14th century records. The execution, the land sales, the English alliance, the Edward III grants, the 1347 truce, the death at Hennebont. That's real. But some of it? The black paint and red sails? That comes from sources that say may have been painted black, or, according to some references. There's no 14th century document describing the color of her ships. The flagship named My Revenge? The earliest source for that name is modern French Wikipedia. The 13 years of piracy? Historian James Adams estimates the documented naval activity was closer to 5 months. Almost all of the dramatic pirate imagery, the black ships, the red sails, the axe executions, the terror campaign, was crystallized in 1868 by a French poet named Émile Péan, who wrote an 8,000-line epic poem called Jeanne de Belleville. It's a romantic novel from the 19th century, not a history book. But here's the thing about that. The legend was invented because the truth was already incredible. A woman who lost everything, her husband, her lands, her identity, rebuilt herself as a military commander, allied with the King of England, attacked her enemies, and raised a son who became Constable of France. Take away the black ships and the red sails. Take away the 13 years and the axe. What's left is a woman who did what no one expected. That's not legend. That's history. Jeanne de Clisson. The Lioness of Brittany. The woman who sailed black ships and red sails. Maybe. The woman who defied a king. Definitely. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories where the truth is richer than the fiction.